Dungeons and Dragons. I believe this is session 15. So we've done 15, or we'll be doing 15 of these. I'm very excited about that. Now, just to remind anybody that hasn't joined us before, this is a storytelling experiment. A while back, I realized that I used to prepare all of my D&D games like just pages and pages and pages of details. But my players were falling in love with characters I would make up on the spot. Now, I'm autistic. I'm not very good at improv. This autistic is not very good at improv, and I was a little worried about that. So I decided to use Brunches and Dragons as a way to experiment with improving. And I love storytelling, so it's a storytelling experiment. What we do here is I invite a guest on. I'm very excited about today's guest. They bring a character with them that they create that I do not look at until the morning of Brunches and Dragons. And then through their descriptions of their character, I think up a story we're going to tell together. It's very collaborative. I'm not going to do anything that my guest is like, no, I hate it. That's not what we're doing today. It's meant to be fun. And we might tell an entire story. We might just tell a piece of one. It depends on how much time we have. Okay, I think that's a good intro to the stream. Now, my guest this morning is the wonderful Blind Temple. I first discovered Temple on Twitter. I was really excited about the tweets they were sharing, the awareness that he spreads, and the community that he's built is really engaging to me. I'm able to share a lot. Almost everything I see from you is super relevant to our community. I say almost because, we as community advocates should be able to like tweet pictures of dogs and stuff, right?
Absolutely.
And so I was just so excited when Temple was able to make time for me. So Temple, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Blind Temple, at Blind Temple on Twitter. I do accessibility stuff for the blind. I help blind people find games that have never played uh, TTRPGs before. I help people in general just with accessibility issues. I do free accessibility passes for independent creators. Uh, that's about it. I'm 56-year-old
You
Okie.
you do an Ask Me Anything
Oh
Twitter.
yes,
Yeah, I that's always fun.
18th. Yeah, the 18th of every month I do a Ask a Blind Guy, where you can come on and ask me how I run the campaigns that I run, or
Mhm.
how I, as a player, do stuff, or just blind guy questions in general, like how I maneuver around, or how I keep from overflowing a drink or something.
A friend of mine was starting to drink tea. They happened to be blind, and I was like, how do you pour hot water into a cup and not overflow? I was fascinated by that. I've
Well,
learned I've learned a lot from that particular Ask a Blind Guy. I learned a lot about how to run a game better for somebody who's low vision or blind. So I've always really appreciated your content. Thank you.
it's nice to get I don't often get feedback on that, so that's nice.
Well, I honestly don't know what I would have done. I mean, there are things out there. I mean, Scraticus Academy was very helpful, but your content is more engaging to me. Like I don't know what it is, but I like the tone. I like your presence in it. It's really good. Please don't stop.
I have no intention.
Great. Okay, so that's us. I'm Spoon. The character Temple is playing today is Leon. What pronouns will we be using for Leon today?
He, him.
Okay. And Temple did share with me earlier that he, him are the pronouns that he is using. Sorry. So that's why I'm referring to him as he. All right. Why don't you go ahead and let's jump right in. Why don't you go ahead and describe Leon for us? What's he look like? What's he care about? What are we looking at?
Leon is, hang on, let me bring him up here real quick. Uh, Leon is a 20-year-old man who is 6'5", big guy.
Oh yeah.
He has brown hair, uh, brown skin, uh, and green eyes. He weighs probably about 230 pounds, and most of it is muscle. is a counter to that. Uh, he's not very fast moving. Not like he's slow, from because he chooses to be. He's just kind of ponderous when he moves and how he acts. Because he has a fairly good strength, he's careful in how he does everything because it's very easy for him to destroy something by accident.
Right. Is it ponderous or deliberate? Like, is he thinks through the moves
It's
he's
oh
gonna
yeah,
make? It
it,
is very deliberate, as
yeah.
opposed to like a knee jerk reaction.
It's a little bit of both,
Okay.
mainly because just the inside here, his dump stat is dexterity.
Great.
So so he's not very agile at all, but it's not necessarily entirely because of the that's the way he is. It's also because he's carefully thinks out everything before he does it.
Yeah, he sounds like a big guy, so I would appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm a big guy, and since I lost my sight, I'm very deliberate like that because
My husband is a big guy, and he is sometimes not as careful as I would like him to be. Uh, and so yeah, I appreciate that in in people. Although to be fair, I am a wheelchair user, and there are dents in all of the walls in this house. All right. Okay, so we know what Leon looks like. Where's Leon from? Yeah, where's he from?
Uh, well, I
Now,
don't know your world.
right. So I forgot to mention this. I use this stream a lot to this particular brunches and dragons to create lore for the world I use in my other campaigns. That world I'm
Right.
calling Azinlia. What's nice about it is I control it, so I can make it as big as I want. I could add a new continent. Who cares? It also
Right.
has some actual D&D content mixed in. Like there's a Wald and there's a Phandalin. So I really don't.
Okay.
Now you can be like he comes from the woods. You can be like he comes from a
Well,
town named this. Whatever. I can work it in.
well, in that case, because I set his beginning and everything in my campaign world
Mm.
that I run, and he comes from the coastal city of Rockton,
Coastal
which is a
city.
city-state in a southern city-state.
Southern cities. How do you spell Rockton?
Rockton, literally Rocktown.
Perfect. I actually have a place that I could put this, so
Okay.
that would work well. I think this is the second time that I've used a character from somebody else's campaign. So I'm going to tell you what I tell everybody. If and when I give you a magic item, you have to ask your GM if you can use it, okay? Because some of my magic items are really weird and I do not want some GM hunting me down, okay?
Well, considering I'm the GM, I think he'll be okay with that.
Great. Uh, cool. Okay, so that's where he's from. So he's from a coastal city. What made him want to go adventuring?
He is a paladin,
Mm-hmm.
and early on he got discovered by the Church of Tyr for his connection with Tyr, and was trained and taught all of the information he needed. He was just a waif on the street, living on his wits, and he owes them. So he goes because they order him to go to help protect people.
Okay. So did his order consist of like go forth and be the protector of the weak and needy, or was it we are assigning you um, to this trip? Like they're specifically going to go
Right.
rebuild this temple on in another city or something like that.
Both.
Okay.
You get sent on an assignment, but while you're on that assignment, Tyr's the god of justice. You
Okay.
met out justice and protect the weak and stuff as you go, whether it's part of your assignment or not.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would imagine that it's not like, okay, just when you're on assignment, just when you get there.
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like this is more of like a lived thing. Like, you will always be
Right.
protecting the weak. You will always be.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So Tyler has joined us. Hi, Tyler. Yes, I was throwing shade at Luth. Sorry. He knows I love him. Luth is my husband. Okay, so he gets sent out on assignments a lot. Now you
Yeah.
built this character at level 1, but do we want this character to be like this is his first assignment? Do we want this to be like he's been doing this for 10 years? Well, he's 20, so first
Yeah.
assignment might be
Uh,
interesting. First or second?
yeah. What do you think? Uh,
First
I don't have any problem with him being young still, doing
oh,
early stuff.
yeah, okay, great. So I think a first assignment could be really interesting because what we can do is play with the ideas of the idealism he had from his training, and then kind of seeing the real world, seeing that
Right.
it's not going to be A plus B equals C. It's going to be A plus what the hell, and oh my god, and then
Right.
Lord, the Lord only knows what's going to happen. Those can be
Tier
some.
only knows.
Yeah, Tyr only knows. Those can be really interesting moments to play through. Does that sound all right? We'll go down that road.
Sure. Sounds good.
Okay, let's see here. So, I forget. So one thing you should know, Temple, is I can't remember the rules to save my life for D&D. I
Oh,
will regularly make up random stuff. I have a rules scholar that plays in a lot of my games, or sits in on the one he's not actually playing in, so that I can be like, "What the hell is?" With your experience, I'm hoping I can ask you questions like, "Does a paladin have a holy symbol?" Because I can't remember.
usually it's his weapon.
Okay, what is Leon's weapon?
He has two matching warhammers.
Ooh,
He has the dual wielding feat, as he's a variant human,
nice.
so he can use two of them at a time. And don't worry about the rules. I've been playing this game since 1980,
Okay,
and I regularly, when I make a rules judgment, use rules that may have been from any edition along the way because I can't keep them straight.
that's awesome.
So,
That's fair. I just make stuff up and then blame it on different
yeah.
planar magics often.
Yeah. I'm an
Um,
improv DM, so I don't,
all
you
right,
know,
so you're familiar with my tomfoolery then. Yeah,
I,
perfect. Sorry, I forgot to distinguish the lines here, so let me just go. Okay. That's,
and I was an improv DM before I went blind, so.
I I'm as an autistic that really likes structure and rules and predictability.
Mhm.
When I first started running these games, I would spend hours
Yeah.
preparing a 2-hour session, and then the players would go left instead of right, and I'd basically
Right.
go into the other room and cry for a minute. Like, it was really difficult for me.
Right.
But now I'm discovering like the world is settled enough in my mind, and I'm not as anxious about the rules. It's a lot
Right.
easier for a player to be like, I want to go into this house. I'll be like, cool. This is what it looks like. These are the people
Uh-huh.
inside. These are the things they care about. Because what I do now with characters is I figure out something that's distinctive about what they look like, and I try and figure out what they care about, and then how that would be
Right.
expressed. And,
Yeah.
you know, and then
Perfect. Yeah.
building maps makes me so grumpy because it takes so long, and if they go left instead of right, or it feels like I'm railroading them, like, well, you can't go right because there's no right to go to. And
All right.
if I don't have to rely on a map, then it's what do you call those video games that are procedurally generated,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
where there's no like edges, you could just go
Yeah.
forever. That's what I
Yeah.
feel
You
like.
go wherever you want. Yeah.
That's what I feel like theater of the mind is for me. Is it's
Hmm.
you can go anywhere, and it helps
Yeah.
because
I
I have
create the map. In my world, I create the map after the players have visited.
I have a world map, and I'll drop
Yeah.
towns and routes on that,
Yeah.
but that's about it these days.
Well, and I became an improv DM because I found that my improvisation in a game was better than what I wrote prior to it. I'm a
That,
better improv than I am a writer, so I
that
just stick with what I'm good at.
that's kind of what I was finding. I've been a writer all my life, but what was troubling for me is I'd prepare all this content, and then I'd have to like read what I wrote, and it ruins kind of the rhythm. And so what I put down on paper is whatever's in my head in that moment. So why not just pull out what's in my head verbally instead of writing it down first and then having to remember it
Right.
later? That was my weird justification for going theater of mind.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
And it helps because some of my players are low vision and blind, so theater of the mind works a lot better than a map.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Much better.
we've got a young man who has excellent training. He's got these 2 matching warhammers that he channels his god's energy through.
Right.
He's gonna go out on his very first mission, or we'll call it an assignment. Is there anything distinctive about these warhammers?
They're just like the standard issue ones from the temple. Each one will have the whatever rune of Tyr carved into both sides of it.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of look along the lines of like Thor's hammer from the Marvel movies, the big, gray-looking things. Oh, I should mention too. He also has a +1 dagger.
Mm-hmm.
That comes from the story, his background story of when he was discovered to be someone blessed by Tyr, and it belongs to the sergeant, or belonged to the sergeant of the guard who had killed his sister and
Oh my goodness.
tried to kill him with it, and he has that as a memory thing, but he doesn't use it.
So it's almost like a token or a talisman.
Yeah, yeah, to remind him.
He always wants to remember his sister.
Oh yeah.
I wonder if that was why he was blessed by Tyr. Is he was too bitty, too small to protect his sister at the time. So that became his. I want to grow up big and strong, so I can protect people like my sister.
Yeah.
Never be helpless again. That kind of thing.
Exactly.
What happened to the guard that tried to kill him?
He killed him with his own dagger.
Oh, so okay, good. Okay, so that's, yeah.
He was laying there bleeding out on the floor with the sergeant of the guard's dagger in his belly, and was contacted by Tyr.
Mm-hmm.
And Tyr told him to remove the dagger and say my name. And he did, and Leon and the dagger and everything on him took on a blue glow as he completely healed. And then while the sergeant of the guard stood there stunned, he stabbed him with his own dagger, killing him.
Nice. I like that. That gives a lot of different shades to this young man who's full of this desire to go out and protect people, right? That gives him a little more depth. He's got a reason. He's got proof that Tyr exists. That's different than somebody who's just doing this on faith alone. I think that gives a little bit of a different edge to that. So that's kind of interesting.
Right.
Is that the only time? No, go ahead.
No, in my campaign world, the gods are very much present.
Okay.
They will talk to believers, individuals, and not like everybody, but people that are doing things in their name, and they will walk the earth even.
That's awesome.
Because I got tired. All the campaigns usually, our gods are this distant thing that you never.
Yeah.
They only punish you. And they give you spells. That's all the context you have. So I made a campaign world where they're very much involved in the day-to-day stuff of it.
That works with my world as well. I do more with patrons than with warlocks and stuff, and there have been 2 godlings. I in my world, it's like everything has its own little sort of faith, like this tree, know, kind of thing.
Right.
There have been 2 godlings that have showed up as NPCs in one of the 3 campaigns, and nobody's noticed, which I love. I do that with magical things and with disabilities. Like I love doing that with my campaigns. Okay, so
I put the gods disguised a lot in mine too.
Yeah, it's fun. It's especially fun when they don't notice. There's so much in my head that doesn't make it down in the streams.
Yes.
Okay, so he's probably been contacted by his god a couple of times, or would he not have been unless he was in trouble? Like what?
He wouldn't have been unless the gods will contact him if it serves the gods' purpose or what their dedicated to accomplishing.
So if he was
But like,
taken into the temple for training, do you think he would have been in a situation where the god would have had to contact him? Because what would be interesting is he had that initial contact. Yes, okay, he does the training, and he doesn't hear from his god again until he goes out on this first assignment. So we could play a little bit with, like, he might be having doubts at this point. Like, did he imagine it? He was so young,
oh yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah, he might be. Yeah, that would be good.
Also, when he glowed with a blue light and healed, did the sergeant could see that, right? Like, that's not something that just appears to Leon. That's visible to everybody
Right.
else.
Yeah, everybody. Yeah, everybody that was there saw it.
So maybe he's seen. I don't know. I kind of like the idea of him being just fresh out of the temple, never having really hit anybody.
Yeah,
Outside of
that
training.
would be good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I would
Okay.
like that. Yeah.
So he's out on his first assignment. This temple is known for justice. So, like, rebuilding a temple might not be the right
Yeah.
fit. What about...
Guarding stuff like, settlers going out into the wilds and things like that.
That could be interesting, because then they could come up against, like, they could come up against wilderness type stuff. And
Right.
would he be torn between, like, but these beasts lived here before destroying them, we shouldn't destroy them, but also I'm here to protect these people? Or would it just be straightforward,
no,
like, nope?
He's from Rockton's a fairly good-sized city, so he has no experience with nature or reverence for it.
That'll be fun. Okay. So, yeah, let's say he's escorting a group of settlers. Let's say they're going into... What if they're going to settle in a place that was originally, like, burned down by, like, bandits or pirates? Like another coastal town. Would that work?
Right. That would be great, yeah.
Okay, escorting settlers to an old abandoned...
Yeah, the first 3 groups I ran through my campaign world, I started all off on the same adventure where they were escorting a caravan of settlers to the new location, and just ran different versions where the different groups were NPCs in the other people's campaign,
Oh, okay.
and we all did the same adventure simultaneously all the way out to the wilds.
That's kind of neat. I like that. I like the idea of going to a town that's already technically established but burned down, because we can deal with, like, ghosts and
Right.
what if those pirates come back. So Leon would have to deal with... so he's probably... Do you think he's the only paladin from the temple on this? Do you think he's leading the expedition?
Probably. I don't know if he would be leading it,
More
because
of a...
he is fairly young and he's there if they need him kind of guy.
So let's say the new mayor for this town is the one leading it. Let's say he's a really tough guy. He's seen a lot. He's older. He puts up with no nonsense, and so he knows that this is Leon's first time out. So what if this guy actually sort of takes Leon under his wing, but, like, includes Leon in all of the decisions he's making, so that Leon gets that experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that'd be very good. Yeah.
Let's call him... we'll call him Mayor Frid.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool too, because all of the really good leaders that I've ever known are constantly training the people under them.
Yeah.
To do, up training them to do other jobs and stuff.
Yeah. So sometimes I have to refer back to some of the details, so I'm taking notes. I also sometimes turn these into short stories. Okay, so...
I don't usually have to take many notes because I'm blind, and if you don't have a good memory when you're blind, you have a broken nose. So...
That's fair. Um, I have ADHD and I didn't take my meds this morning, so if I don't write it down in about 15 minutes, I'm gonna be like, "What the hell was that guy's name?" Okay, so he's kind of giving him this experience. We'll say the group is, I mean, to get a town kind of started, you're gonna need a group of about probably like 20 families. So this is going to be a fairly large group. And let's say that Leon is the sort of the holy man slash professional, but there are other guards. So Leon is nominally in control of them, but Mayor Frid is really running that
Okay.
game, and
Right.
Leon's
Okay.
learning how to command a group. Right. So like the first
Right.
night, Mayor Fred would have been like, okay, so we need to set a guard. And Leon was probably like, okay, I know how to do that. I studied this. Okay. But Mayor Fred's like, but you got to take into account the men you're working with, right? There are some men that you can't just assign to the dawn shift because they'll stay up until dawn, so they're
Right.
they're better for the first shift. And so Leon knows it should be every 4 hours and it should be three shifts and it should, but
Right.
the mayor is giving him practical knowledge.
Right.
Okay.
That's great. Yeah.
All right. So the group is going to involve a lot of families, and so that's an interesting dynamic because theoretically these people would have all come together because they wanted a new start. But that doesn't always mean they're all going to get along. So I bet Leon's probably going to have to deal with some disputes, right? Like, well, she's took my
Right.
chicken or whatever, and he's probably going to end up being the person everybody comes to, right? Him or the
Right.
mayor. And when the mayor's busy, they come to Leon because of who he is and the temple he comes from, right? Like you should
Right.
know
Right.
justice when you see it, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
And then,
And he would be trained in doing that, in
right,
making judgments and handing out justice.
but I think he would. So he's definitely trained to do that, but I bet it's not to the order of like, well, she shoved me, and I skinned my
Yeah.
knee,
No.
and
Well, and he would have no practical knowledge in doing it. It would be.
that's true, yeah,
He would just know what the temple had taught him to do.
right. And so in practicality, it's like, well,
Yeah, and he's going to run into a lot of stuff that's not in the handbook.
yeah, which I really like.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's dealing with that. I think there are also going to be people in this group that don't want to go, right? Like the family wanted to go and like they bring grandma along and grandma's like,
Oh,
no,
yeah.
it's haunted,
Yeah.
And so he might be dealing with somebody who's like, will you be able to tell if it's haunted because you come from a temple and you are blessed, and how do you think Leon would deal with that? Like, is he trained to deal with that kind of thing, do you think?
He would reassure them and let them know that he was more than capable of defending them against any kind of supernatural event.
So I love that. I think it would be fun if so let's say Granny comes along and demands this reassurance, he reassures her, and then like the next day she's like, okay, but what about this? And she keeps bringing up other,
Yeah, yeah,
and he eventually has to get to the point where he's like, yes ma'am, and like practice patience. Like there's gonna be a lot of
uh-huh.
practicing patience on this trip.
Well, and I see him as being young and very overconfident in what his abilities are.
Yeah.
So, he's quick to assure her that he is trained and able to, with Tyr's help, to protect them from anything that might appear.
Do you think if the mayor was sort of observing him, he would notice that at all? I'm imagining a bit where he's reassuring the granny, like of course, and he's
Right.
making big statements like I can defend you against anything, and the mayor's sort of like
Yeah.
watching him and sort of smiling like
Yeah, I think anybody that's really experienced and would be smart enough to like help train up the Leon
yeah.
would probably be experienced with new guys that are fresh out of training, which being overconfident in your skills is pretty much a standard thing for
Yeah.
that. So
I like the idea of these different groups of people, of like little kids that are
Right.
looking up to him, and like older, more experienced people that are like, you'll learn, and there's one or two guys that are like, oh, you kind of want to do it this way, giving him that
Right.
experience. there might be young ladies flirting with him because you've got a town here. You really want to have that
Right.
age range. So he's dealing with all kinds of stuff he's never dealt with before. Does the
Right.
Temple of Tyr, do they take in women for their training program, or is it just
Yes,
men?
they do.
Okay.
Nope.
So he's met women his age, but this is kind of different, right? Like these women don't have
Right.
if he likes women, these young people don't have the military, decorum
Right.
that he's been trained
Right.
to. So they're
Right.
a little bit more wild, and he has to deal with that. He's going to be dealing with a lot. I think this is going to be a really interesting
Yeah. Yeah.
trip. So we can either do something sort of small and domestic and have him deal with, let's say, a dispute of some kind within one of the camps. We could jump to, they get to the town, and maybe the reason this town was picked is there was originally a Temple of Tyr here, which was destroyed in the attack, and he has been instructed to start rebuilding
Right.
it. And a more experienced priest will come along once their creature comforts. But until then,
Right.
he has to defend the temple, and I don't think he could reconsecrate it, but he'd need to,
Yeah.
and maybe there's something in there that he has to like overcome.
Right. Yeah, I like that. That sounds, and the townspeople are there to rebuild the town and help restore the temple, and yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, they were recruited by the temple. Like, we'll
Right.
help fund this new town if you put in the labor to help rebuild the temple.
And it gives them a fresh start someplace.
Yeah, everybody
I like
wins kind of thing. Okay,
Yeah.
So do you-
Except whoever's living in the temple now.
right. So do you want to do small domestic or big bad in the temple?
Small domestic sounds more interesting.
Okay. So let's say the place that the town they are traveling to, let's say it was destroyed about 20 years ago. So it's not even a memory for him.
Right.
And so the roads that they're taking to get there are not going to be like clear, once they get off the beaten path. So their progress is slowed considerably because the adult men and women are having to sort of hack a path or drag fallen trees off the road or bring in dirt to
Right.
fill in a bit that's caved in or stuff like that. So I would imagine that tempers are running high at this point. And what if there's a family that's really short on food? So each family brought their own food. And then there's another, what are they called? Chuck wagon? Food wagon.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's called a chuck wagon, so I don't think I want to call it that. I'll call it a food wagon until I figure out what that is from.
More than likely because the guy that's driving its name is Chuck.
I mean, we could do that,
Yeah.
So this food wagon, which is driven and controlled by Chuck, is the one that the guards eat out of, right? The mayor's sort of
Right.
like, I don't think he has a council yet, but it's like there's going to be a couple of
Elder.
single men and women, that don't have families that are coming along.
Right.
They all eat from Chuck's wagon.
Right.
Whereas each of the family units have brought their own food, and the temple has provided like staples like grain and water and
The basics.
beans. Yes, the basics. But they each have their own like special like spices and specialties. I think they've been told comfort foods. Yeah, I think they've been told to bring a minimum of like stock, right? Like cows and stuff, because this town is kind of, we'll say it's like embedded in a cliff, and that's not really. They're more fishermen and stuff like that. Does that sound all right?
Right. Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, because I really just don't want like a drove of cattle following this group, because feeding them
Well,
it's a whole other nightmare.
A coastal town is going to have at least some fishing, you would assume.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So, they are. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. we can either have a family that's just running low on stuff for whatever reason, or we can have a family whose special fish stew spice blend was stolen.
Okay.
Which would you rather?
The stolen spices. That sounds fun.
Okay. Or if you have another idea, I'm happy to go with that as well.
No, that sounds fun.
Okay, so let me just on the road, off beaten path, progress slowed, tempers running high. So one family's special fish stew spice blend has been stolen. Now I want to make a fish stew. Okay, so one family's special fish stew spice blend has been stolen. Okay,
right.
So let's set the scene. Each of the guards are, let's say they're sharing tents 2x2. So they've all got roommates. We'll make Leon's roommate unobjectionable in all regards, right? Like he doesn't snore, he doesn't smell bad, he keeps the space clean. So he's got to kind of fade into the background.
All right.
Now, does this temple do anything with... I just realized I've been using the word temple a lot, and that is your name. So that might be confusing. What else can I call it? Church. I can call it church. So
Church, yeah.
Does this church worship like sunrises or sunsets or moons or anything like that? Do you think Leon would be up at dawn, like doing his ablutions and all that stuff really early, or?
Yeah, and probably doing like, since he's a militant, paladin guy, he'd probably be up going through his kata, with warhammers and stuff, and doing his training first thing in the morning before everybody else was up.
Okay. And does he find that very centering, like that gives him his balance for the day?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So right in the middle of that.
That would probably be when he was doing his prayers and everything.
Right in the middle of that, I'm gonna have a snarl of humans come to him. So let's say the woods around here are fairly thick, but they rested last night in a clearing, but it was a little crowded. So he's had to go off a little ways to find another smaller clearing where he had enough room to swing those hammers.
Mm-hmm.
It happens to be near the stream that they're using, so people know where he is. Like that's when you're traveling like this, someone always has to know where you are.
Right. He would have told the guard, whoever was on watch, where he was going.
Mm-hmm. So what he hears is the snap, crackle, pop of the bushes being shoved through. Like these people are coming to talk to him really seem like a snarling mass because they're having to shove and chop their way through these bushes to come to him. Do you think he would react like somebody's coming to attack me, or do you think he'd know right away like these are some of the families from the trip?
I think he would believe, since they're coming from the direction of where the camp is, he would believe they were the people from the camp.
Okay.
And continue to do his exercise.
Okay. So they get up on his clearing, and he can see that it's mainly, we'll say, a man and a woman sort of screaming at each other. They both have sort of two supporting characters, and then the mayor is following them. And they basically are shoving their way through the bushes to get to you, but also just screaming at each other. And so that's what's in this clearing with you now, are these two people screaming at each other, shaking their fists, almost coming to blows, and they're supporting humanoids sort of pulling them back. Like, this is a mess. Your ears are ringing. The birds have taken flight in alarm. Like, they're causing a huge racket. If there's anything around here that's going to come attack you, this is what's going to start it.
Leon sighs and stops his exercise and steps back a second and looks at them.
Mm-hmm. You can at this point it's mostly screeching and bad names, so
Right.
it's not,
Right.
he can't quite tell what the fight is about because it's escalated.
Right.
He can tell this is, this has probably been going on for an hour or so. Like one of the women is just
Right.
bright red. She looks like she's gonna have a heart attack.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
How do you think
Uh,
does he start to get involved? Does he just wait until they stop talking? What do you think he's doing here?
he stands there and watches them for a minute,
Mm-hmm.
and then he loudly says, "Calm yourselves."
I think the two women fighting will ignore you and continue screeching, but I think on one side, a young man steps forward and kind of claps his hand over the woman's mouth, and when she struggles, he like points at you, like he said, "Calm down." And then on the other side, I think an older woman is gonna like sort of jerk the screamer by the elbow, and the screamer like whips around on her like, "How dare!" And she points at you and is like, "Calm the fuck down." So both the fighters like turn to you like arms crossed, like, "What are you gonna do about it?" kind of thing. And there's silence, and it's a ringing silence. They've scared away everything. I think the mayor's probably gonna walk around to stand sort of by you. So it's kind of you and the mayor. He's sort of hovering behind you. It's very clear that he's going to see what you're going to do. He's been doing this to you the whole trip.
Right.
He'll step in if, he'll step in if things start getting escalating, but he's just going to watch. And then across from you, so you're sort of facing each other, are these two families.
Let me ask you a question about the mayor.
Mm-hmm.
Does he, since he's experienced and he's done this a lot,
Mm-hmm.
or he's, experienced in handling people, does he seem particularly insightful?
I think I would say he is. Yeah. I think there've probably been times where Leon's been dealing with something, conflict wise, and the mayor's like dropped a word or two in his ear, and Leon's been able to use that insight to help solve the problem. Does that sound right?
All right. Yeah, yeah. Leon turns to the mayor and says, "What appears to be the problem?"
And I think the mayor's gonna, kind of rub his chin, and he'll say, "Well," like he expects to be interrupted, and he is. And the two women that came in here start screaming, yelling at the top of their lungs, "Shit!" It's hard to understand. And the mayor just continues to talk to you because he's close enough. And he says, "Well, I have to name these families. I'm using a cross-stitch pattern to steal names from. Let's see here. So, he'll say the family on the right is known as Toto. That's the Toto family. And the family on the left is the Sign family.
Okay.
And he says, from what I can gather, the Toto family is accusing the Sign family of stealing their special fish stew spice recipe, something along those lines. And the Sign family is taking great offense to the accusation, as you can see. And I think Leon will have heard of this spice. Like, I feel like the Toto family is the kind of family that will not shut up about their fancy spices. And so now that you know what's going on, you can hear a little bit of like the Toto family being like, the Sign family's always been jealous of what we and our family have been able to accomplish, and the Sign family's like, we wouldn't eat your stew if it was the last food on Earth. It tastes like swill. And so that's kind of the tone of their fight.
Leon looks at the two main people that are arguing. Says, "You're willing to stand before Tyr's judgment?"
And they both like, yes, absolutely. And go ahead and roll an insight check for me.
Okay. Let me. was a little slow.
That's okay. I don't mind. Often at this point, I have to.
17.
Ah, perfect. So he can tell that both women, both families, feel 100% right. There's no doubt on either side that they are right, which is a little unusual. When you've done judgments before, sometimes you can
Right.
tell with a roll that good. You would normally be able to tell if one family's like a little feeling a little guilty. Both families,
Right.
now, and these are very strong families. Like you've got your mix of families, you've got your quieter families, more deferential. These two families are this is not a surprise. These two families have been ready to come to blows this entire time. This town's going to be interesting.
Great. Before I ask Tyr for the information that we require, what punishment do you seek? He asked the Toto family.
The Sign family starts to jump in, and the Toto family, they start to scream at each other again. But the Sign family, the young man is trying to pull, like trying to put his hand over her mouth, like shut up, kind of thing. And it seems like the women are very fierce and screamy, and the supporters are kind of torn, right? Like they want justice as well, but at the same time, the heads of their family are acting a little ridiculous, so you can see some embarrassment there. The Toto family finally is able to say, where I come from, thieves lose hands. Yeah.
You realize as you're accusing the entire family, that would mean everyone in the family would lose a hand.
Well, where I come from, if there's one thief in the family, the entire family's to blame. So yes, I think that's fair.
Okay, I want to check out the crowd, see how they react to the idea of that family all losing a hand if it's found against them.
You okay using the same insight check, or do you want to roll again?
Oh, I'd really like to use the same insight check. It was a good one.
Let's go ahead and use that one then. So on the
Uh,
Toto family side, you've got the matriarch. She's very much the matriarch. Her husband's been has passed away, and she's been leading this really a tiny clan for a while now. Flanking her are her mother, who is a bit of a, you can clearly see where this matriarch's gotten this from, but doesn't want to lead. And then on the other side, you see, we'll say, middle-aged gentleman. The mother looks, yeah, absolutely, that's the right thing to do. The man looks unsure, especially when she's like, of course, the whole family. He looks even more unsure. Like, this seems kind of extreme. The Sign family, their matriarch is on the smaller side, but she seems to take up more space. She's got this hair that it's just like it looks like a backdrop. Like it's wild and beautiful hair. And then the young man has been trying to cover her mouth looks to be like a younger relation. He's also got this hair. And then the other person with them is another older gentleman. He has been impassive this entire time, and he doesn't really react to the losing a hand thing. The matriarch is like, "How dare you?" And the young man kind of quiets her and says, "We agree, because we are not thieves. So there's no reason we won't lose our hands." And he's kind of stumbling over this. He's not quite sure what he's trying to say. But basically it boils down to they don't think they're guilty, so sure, cut off the thief's hand.
All right, then. We need to go back to the encampment because everybody must see justice done.
And they seem satisfied with that. And then, so you all head back to the encampment. Do you need a break at all? I need a small break. Is that okay?
Sure, go ahead. No, I'm fine.
Okay, so we're going to be heading back to the encampment. Stream, we're going to take a 5-minute break, so we should be back by about 40 minutes after the hour, a little bit before 40 minutes after the hour. So, be right back, Stream. There we go. Hi, Stream. We are back. Okay, so we are. Let's see. Leon and the mayor and these two families, the Toto and the Sign family, are heading back to the encampment. I think the two families are gonna like struggle, for who's gonna go first back through the thing the path they cut. And I think the Toto family probably wins, so they end up going first, and then that leaves the Sign family sort of like muttering under their breath as they travel along. I think the mayor's going to stick with you, Leon, and kind of encourage you to hang back.
Right.
And
I will.
I think he'll say, "So, what do you think is going on here?"
I, just from judging their faces as we spoke, I do not believe that either family is guilty of this. I believe it's some outside.
And the mayor says, "Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. I specifically didn't recruit any families that were prone to this, and yes, the Toto family is obnoxious, but stealing a family's spice it seems out of character for these folk."
Yes. Well, when we get back to the camp, I will call everybody together, and we will stand where we can be seen,
Mm-hmm.
the both of us.
Yeah.
You watch the faces of everyone in the crowd
Okay.
when I make my judgment, and we will look for the guilty party there because they're probably not ready for the judgment I will give.
That sounds good. And you said you were going to call on Tyr. Do you think that's quite necessary? And what you know about the mayor is he does believe in the gods, but he's the type that's like, we do not bother them
Right.
unless we're about to offend them. Like, that's about it. So he's sort of cautious about calling on gods.
Right. Well, in this case, Leon will look at him and have a small smile, because this is finally something where he has a knowledge advantage over the mayor. It's kind of, the mayor knows all this stuff and he's been right every time.
Yeah.
And here's something that he understands that says, it will not be a bother to Tyr.
Okay. As if you're sure of that, he is your god, and I respect that. I just want to be sure.
Tyr is in my heart, and my heart says, this is fine.
And he accepts that, and that's a little unusual for a man like him to just, all right, yep, whatever you say. Yeah, so I think that's a good interaction. So you get back to the encampment, and this is, what did I say? Morning. So people are getting up. The kids are already running around. Babies are crying, that kind of thing, but not the like scared crying, just like the feed me or else. You see people stretching. You see people coming out of their tents. You see a couple of campfires are up and running. A couple are getting started. You see moms washing behind kids' ears, that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I've traveled with the guards and dealt with them a lot, I assume.
Yeah.
Do I have any suspicions of any of the guards of possibly being a thief? Like one that particularly likes to eat, so he would
Right.
value the spices or something?
I think there's probably about 10 guards for this
Right.
bunch. I think they're probably mostly pulled from the families, with like one or two familyless, like the older sons, that wanted to join the guard and
Right.
kind of thing. And they like to keep that kind of in the family. I think there's probably, we'll say 3 of them that aren't from any of these families. And you've noticed that they're kind of cliquey. They kind of group together. And one of them is a mutterer. Like, he's always like muttering under his breath about something. And it's not even worth catching what he's saying, because it's just not, he's just being rude. I think the other 2 are probably, let's say they're brothers, and let's say that they're big eaters. Now, they're big guys. They got to eat, to work.
Right.
And we'll say one of them is a lot quieter than the other, right? I don't think they're twins, but no, yeah, they're twins.
Okay.
We'll say they're twins. And so one of them's, traditional twin stuff is a little quieter than the other. But that might be, I think that might be what you're thinking of.
Right. Okay. When we get back to camp, Leon will immediately call those guards together over to him.
Okay. They come over, and the talkie twin is like, "Yes, sir. What do you need?"
I'm about to make a judgment on possible thievery that's gone on here, and I need you in the group of you in the crowd when I make that judgment.
Okay. All three of them nod. You hear the mutterer say, "Of course, there's a thief." And they take up stations around the crowd, so you can easily see their You haven't called the crowd yet, so they're going to prepare to take up stations, but they seem to understand what you said.
And the reason that Leon wants them there is so that he can watch their faces when and the mayor can watch their faces.
Do you want to do an insight check now after you've given them those instructions? Yeah, go ahead and do that.
Wish my insight was better. Oh, and this is why I wish it was better. A 6.
So
yeah, they're guards.
So these three guys come from the same region, we'll say, and we'll say in that region they're not overly expressive. And so what you've seen from them so far is they're not big laughers, they're not really big talkers, they don't get into fights. That's one good thing. And the closest you get to expression of any kind is the mutterer. So they're hard to read anyway.
Okay.
Not quite sure.
Okay. I look around the encampment. Is there a particular wagon that I could climb in the back of without, knocking over a family's stuff, or stand on the tailgate of the wagon so I could get above everybody so they could all see me?
I think the way that this camp is probably going to be set up is in family groups. So 3 or 4 families will set up their wagons, and then have a shared space inside, and then that's set up in another circle, and then the guards wagon is at the top of the circle. Okay. And I think that's probably the biggest open space, so the men can work out together. They all eat in the same area, and there's 10 of them, whereas the family groups sort of clump. So that's probably the best place to have everyone gather.
Okay. I'll climb up there and call for the group's attention. If you all gather around, a judgment of Tyr needs to be made.
Now these are God-fearing folk. So they're you've seen people making a prayer specific to traveling, specific to their situation and whatnot. So you're only going to get a couple of people that are going to roll their eyes and be like, "Oh, of course." So everybody starts to trickle in. About the only people that are staying behind are you see 1 or 2 sort of grandpa types being like, I want my coffee. And the real bitty kids that just run around screaming all the time are just going to keep doing that. So that's kind of your background noise.
That's fine.
But all of the adults and all of the young adults join. And so with the wagon set up in circles in a circle, that big open space in the middle is kind of where they're all going to gather. And the 3 guards will set up.
The mayor get up here with me.
Yeah, the 3 guards will set up at the other points of the compass. So let's say you're at the north point, they'll go east, west, south, so you can see all of them clearly.
Okay. Cool. And I'll help the mayor climb up here too onto the wagon.
Yep.
So we can both be seen.
I'll say this is Chuck's wagon, and he is grumbling mightily about you getting up on his wagon. You better not touch anything.
Yes, don't worry, Chuck. I won't mess up your thing.
He seems satisfied by that, but he's eyeing the mayor kind of thing. He trusts you.
All right. These 2 families.
So they'll be at the front.
The Totos and the suit have a dispute. A fish spice has been stolen.
There's some muttering.
Which family was it stolen from again? I should have wrote that down. Let
It's
me
fine.
write that down.
No, it's fine. The Toto family is what it was stolen from. So it's Toto and Sign.
Okay.
You hear some muttering, like you hear somebody laugh, and you hear somebody you hear a lot of gasps. Like to these people, spices are going to be really important. And so to have a family's special recipe stolen, like you hear a lot of like, oh, who would, that kind of thing.
The Tyr's judgment will be made. Upon the guilt being ascertained, the entire family will have their left hand removed.
There's some yells at that, like, what do you mean? And
that's when we want to make insight checks of the whole crowd and
go for it. I'm going to ask you for, I think I'm just going to ask you for one insight check for the whole crowd and the guards, and we'll go through it one at a time.
All right. Oh, that's not bad. 16.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So.
And the mayor would as well. Hopefully, he's got a better insight than I have.
Let me roll for him. He's got a 14, so that's not too bad. So,
because I'm counting on, I figure I've traveled with these people for a while now. I've probably got a sense of that they're fairly decent people, and
yes. Yeah.
And anybody that hears that somebody else is going to get their hand removed for a crime they committed, more than likely is going to react to that if they're a decent human being.
Right. So you want to start with the guards or the families?
The guards.
Okay. So, again, these guys aren't usually expressive, but both of the twins get pale. And you remember that the town that they come from was destroyed. And so you imagine, they're remembering some things. The mutterer, jumps and just, you can see his mouth moving. He's muttering furiously to himself. And he looks angry, like he's gripping his weapon really tightly. Now, the families, the Toto and Sign families are sort of looking defiant. There's a couple of families that usually group together that are quieter. They don't cause disputes. They might be the kinds of people that are helping to solve some disputes. And what you're getting from them is concern. You're getting that is a really harsh judgment. You see some confusion on some faces. That's not usually the kind of judgments Tyr's that they'd be familiar with from you. You see that confusion turn into suspicion as they're looking at the Toto family. That would totally be something they would ask for. There's a couple of families that usually group with the Toto family. You can see them subtly, the whole group sort of step to the side of where Toto is, towards them.
Right.
And to you, that indicates they're gonna back that family no matter what.
Right.
They approve of, as a group, they approve of that judgment. No one should steal. That's the group you're hearing the most get them kind of thing from. You see one or two people sort of a hand, we're establishing a town. This seems harsh from that group. You see another group, maybe two families that are just abhorrent. They hate violence, any deliberate damage type thing. To them, justice is hard labor or something like that. Losing a hand is completely out of line, and they've stepped back from the whole group. They're very upset. And then you see another group that's aligning with the Sign family, and you're hearing from them kind of the same thing from the Toto family supporters of whoever stole this deserves blah blah blah, and it's not us, and da 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 da. You're not seeing anyone that looks particularly guilty, which I think, how do you think Leon would react to that? He set up a perfect situation. That's a perfect way. It's textbook. He's really sure he got a good look at everybody, and he didn't see any guilt. What do you think he would do?
Well, he would probably be frustrated because like most young guys that are doing this, he was pretty sure his plan was going to work.
Yeah.
Uh,
And you hear the mayor whisper into your ear, huh, I'm not seeing anyone. You know,
let's,
he's sort of backing up your thought there.
right.
Can you roll a perception check for me, please?
Okay, I can. Perception. 12.
You see movement in the trees, and
Mm-hmm.
you are almost positive you hear a giggle.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, how far away from me is that?
So the wagon that you're standing on top of is fairly close to the tree line. The flicker of movement
Right.
you saw is across the clearing, which again is
Okay.
crowded, and
Right.
you wouldn't actually have put that down to anything other than a shifting tree branch if you hadn't heard the giggle right behind you. It's not like behind you, but it's in the trees behind you. So maybe
Okay.
we'll say maybe 6 or 7 feet away.
Okay. Well, when I perceive it and everything, I'll jump down off the wagon and rush over there.
Okay. I'm gonna ask for another perception. This die is fired.
Okay. Perception. 10 this time.
I rolled very, very badly.
Died.
So yeah, so that die is gonna go rest because clearly it's having a hard time. Switch to another die.
Time out. Time out.
Well, I try to treat my dice less as like jail time and more of a, you know, maybe you just need to take a minute to gather your energy. So actually, I think what ends up happening is you're moving. You said that you weren't agile, but I do think he can still move
Right.
when he needs to move.
Right.
And I think the mayor jumps down after you. And I think what you see actually is a very small figure flat on his face and another one pointing and laughing. And they both see you as you run up and they start to run away.
Okay. Real quickly,
Mm-hmm.
I would like to use divine sense.
Remind me what that does.
Well, let's see. 3 times a day, I can detect, as an action, I can detect good and evil until the end of your next turn. You can sense anything affected by the Hallow spell or know the location of any celestial fiend undead within 60 feet. Unless they're behind total cover.
Okay.
It comes in the Paladin's toolkit.
Yes, I'm just trying to figure out if this thing is something you would pick up.
That's what I was, that's the first thing I want to know is what I'm dealing with.
Right. I'm just trying to find. None of this is helpful. That's exciting.
Well, his whole plan was to get a reaction.
Right.
And he didn't get a reaction from the people, but he got one from something in the forest, so he goes with what the plan was.
I'm gonna say you can pick it up. This is what's the range on this?
60 feet?
I'm gonna say that reaches around the edges of the clearing. You actually pick up about 30 very tiny.
Oh.
And you can tell what it is, right? It isn't just like there's a thing there. You kind of know a little bit
Right.
about it. They're fey, and they're
Ah,
they've ringed the whole clearing.
I see. Okay. Well, once I see that and identify them,
Hmm.
I will say I will point it out to the mayor. Does he see them?
He sort of like is not as fast as you,
Right.
and they're starting to flicker as they're running away. I don't think he sees them.
Okay. I will look at him and say, uh, I have seen what it is that I believe is causing the trouble,
Hmm.
and my senses, gifted by Tyr, tell me that our encampment is surrounded by them.
And he's
They are Fey. They are small, but as I recall from my lessons, they are quite annoying and can be dangerous.
the mayor swears like viciously and kind of stomps his foot, and he's like, that is all we need. We are so close to that town too. This They're gonna bug us forever. And
Well, I believe it's how we deal with them, sir.
he says, well, I've you can't just kill them. They're so hard to kill. What are we gonna do?
We attempt to get them on our side.
He looks sort of like, this is the first time you've seen the mayor sort of out of sorts. You know, like
Uh,
he went from like cool, we'll figure out who the family is, and blah, blah, blah. He didn't seem to be really phased by the hand chopping thing. I don't think he thinks you were gonna do that. But now he
right. No,
seems like,
I had no intention.
he's kind of pulling his hair, and he's like, "What are we gonna do?" He seems completely at a loss. Like
Right,
he's probably heard the same stories you have. They're tricksome. They can, some of their tricks can be dangerous.
right.
But all he's like, well, we have to kill all of them. And then you say it depends on how we deal with them. And he's like, what do you have like a special trap we can use? Like, what are you talking about?
No. The teachings of Tyr tell you, create no enemies where there are none. We shall talk to them respectfully and give them a gift for passing through their woods, which this is. We are passing through their home. We gift them, we treat them with respect, and hopefully they will return that.
His mouth is like hanging open, and he was like, you honestly believe if we can just talk to them, give them a gift, and they'll just let us go and not follow us until the ends of the earth? And he's starting to like raise his voice and like yell, and you see people kind of like creeping around the back of the wagon, like
Uh-huh.
to watch what's happening.
I said, have you ever dealt with them in any way other than trying to trap them or kill them?
And he says, no, because that's not how you deal with these little monsters. I grew up on a farm that they plagued my entire childhood. I can tell you 100 ways to kill these little bastards. And I think,
Jeez.
yeah, I think you hear like a growl come from like a
Uh-huh.
bush, and like it shakes a little
Uh-huh.
bit.
And Leon will lay his hand on the mayor's shoulder and he says, but this is not how we will deal with them this day.
The mayor,
You asked me to solve this and to settle this.
yeah,
Tyr's judgment is still in effect. I am the one who rules here, not you.
the mayor sort of like is taken aback. Like he's looking at you, like, and you can see his,
Yeah.
like every time he looks at
What?
you like you're a kid. And
Right.
for the first time,
It's
he's
probably
kind of,
the first time. Yeah, it's probably the first time Leon's exerted any authority he might have in a situation.
I think for sure, yeah, that's true. And I think the mayor he's unbalanced. You get a
Right.
sense of that, like but you see him sort of take control of himself, and he says, "You're right. I may not be entirely reasonable about this, so I will defer to your judgment. If you can get us, and it's almost like he can't help himself. He says, if you can get us out of this without any loss to life and limb and property, then good for you." Like he doesn't really think you can do it, but he's bowing to like go for it.
Well, then you go back to the encampment and to the people and calm them and give me a moment to speak with our new friends.
And he's like, fine. And he sort of, throws his hands up in the air and stop, and he's like, "All right, people," and he's like trying to get him back around the wagon. A very tiny old lady. She's got a walking stick that's maybe 2 feet long. She bitty. But she has her prayer and stuff has always been a little different. Very nature focused. Her whole family, every time they take down a deer or even collect firewood, are thanking the forest and for the bounty and all that stuff. So
Right.
she comes forward around the other side of the wagon that the mayor is, kind of getting people back the other way. She comes around the
Right.
other side, and she basically, totters up to you, and she looks up because you're super
Yeah.
tall, and she's gonna say, "Young man," and she'll like put her cane down and both hands over the top of it.
Do I know her name?
I don't think so. I don't think you know everybody's name because there's probably about maybe around 80 of these people.
I'm sorry, grandmother, but I have not learned your name.
And she says, "That's not important at this time. Did I hear you say there are fae in these woods?"
Yes, ma'am, there are, I believe.
And she says, "That mayor is wrong. If we start trying to kill them, they're going to cause havoc, the likes you've never seen. I will not let you do this."
I understand that, ma'am. I intend to speak with them. What do you know of Fae?
And she's sort of like, "What do I not know of fae? The easiest way to protect your home is a ring of salt, because they find it so distracting." She starts to like spout off all these like little like myth type stuff, and
Right.
she does mention like the right way to have a home is to put out offerings to the fae, so like a bowl of milk
Right.
and like an apple or whatever the seasonal fruit is.
Right.
And my family's been doing this the whole time, and none of our stuff has been disturbed, but some of the other families have things, shoelaces tied together, tiny rips in bags, so that the stress of the, tangled traces, missing horseshoes. So she lists all these things that really
Right.
kind of just happen when you're traveling
yeah,
this
yeah.
much. But you
Yeah.
could also see the Fae doing all of those things.
Right, right.
And she says, "So what are you going to do about it?"
I intend to go out and talk to our little friends and arrange to compensate them for us traveling through their woods
She looks
and try to make friends with them.
she looks very very slightly impressed, like, "Oh, a young man with sense. What is the world coming to?" Is kind of the
I
the air she has, and she sort of nods her head and she says, "Well, my family has the right kinds of gifts. If you would like to consult with us, you know where to find my wagon." And she totters away again. Like she feels. Where's the? Sometimes talking is hard, Temple. I just had like 8
I have
thoughts try to
the
come out of my
same
mouth
problem when
at the same
I have
time.
the same problem when I use telepathy.
Right? Okay, so whereas the mayor was like, "Fine, do whatever you want. This isn't gonna work." You very much get the sense from her of, "Oh, you know what you're doing. If you need help, I'll be over here. Go forth." And so there's more confidence based there.
Right. Okay. He will turn from that, smile at the nice little old lady, and walk a little further into the woods so that he's out of direct line of sight of the wagon or the camp. And he will kneel there in the forest, laying his hammers down on the ground next to him. He says, "Come, let us speak."
You hear a giggle. Seems like the same giggle you heard before.
Surely you can gain more from talking with me than you can from enraging the people of the encampment.
It is as if somebody has shoved the Fae, and he sort of like stumbles a little bit and then tries to recover.
Uh-huh.
This little guy is maybe 1.5 feet tall. He's quite small. You can see that he's got bits and bobs that look like little things that have been stolen on a vest
Right.
that look like medals. And you
All
can
right.
see a hat that he's made that looks, it's clear it's meant to look very fancy, but it's made out of like
Uh-huh.
moss and stuff. And he's got his
Uh-huh.
chest thrust out like he's, big and mean and strong,
Uh-huh.
and he kind of struts
Uh-huh.
up to you. And in the shrillest voice you've ever heard, which I'm not going to do on stream because it'll make my ears hurt, but it's a very shrill voice, he says, "You are on our land." And you hear like, yeah, from all around you. And you can,
Right.
that sense that you did, the divine sense, that stays for a little while, right? It's not like a 3-second
Yeah.
thing.
Let me see. Let me see. I think it's like an hour or two.
Yeah, so as you were going into the woods, you could feel like there's still a ring around the camp, but a bunch of them have started to follow you, right? So when you went to kneel down,
Right.
you can feel they're ringed around you now. And as he says, you're on our land, and you can you can hear them all around you being like, "Yeah, get him," kind of thing. Like, but
Oh,
all
no, it was
very
only
shrill.
it only lasted until the end of my next turn, so it was only a matter of seconds.
Okay, well then you can tell they're there by the grumbles when he says you're on
Okay.
their land.
All right. All right. Before I begin, I'm an admirer of fine hats, and I must say your hat is among the most magnificent I have ever seen.
If he could puff up larger, he would. Like, it's almost impossible levels, and he's like, "Yes, it is the finest hat in the world," and still very shrill voice. And you hear a couple of giggles, and he glares around at the giggles like, it is a very fine hat." And they calm down.
If only my order of tier would allow me to wear hats, I would wear such a fine hat myself.
And he says, "Humans look silly in hats."
This is true, but we persist in wearing them.
And
We're human.
he doesn't seem to know what to do with that. He's like, "Yes, well, hat, yeah."
All right, let me explain to you, calmly. Do you know of the god Tyr?
Have you ever seen somebody like very clearly not know what that is, but they're
Yeah.
like, "Yes, of course, yeah." He does that, and there are more giggles, more glaring. Pretty much anytime he says something, somebody giggles, and he glares at that spot.
Well, I am a follower of that god,
Yes,
and he is a god of justice.
yes,
That means that he seeks for the fairest solution to all sides.
yes, yes. He just says
And
yes a
as
bunch.
we in the wagon train have violated your territory, although it was unknowingly. We did not realize we were moving into your lands.
When you say moving into your lands, he says, "You cannot live here. This is our lands. You must go."
We have no intention of living here. Where we intend to live is farther away along the coast.
He immediately changes sides, and he's like, "Why wouldn't you want to live here? This is the finest land of all land." Like, he gets really defensive about it.
Alas, I agree. If I could live anywhere, I would love to live in these woods. Down by the little stream, it was beautiful there.
And
But
he
our
giggles
people
because you probably washed there, and he's like, "Heh heh heh."
Yeah.
Yeah, they're yeah.
The people that I am protecting are fisher folk. They fish in the sea. They
Fish.
don't understand the woods.
Yes, dumb.
So, what I would like to do is to compensate you for our mistake of moving through the woods and ask your forgiveness and for you to stop taking vengeance for our unknowing crime upon the wagon train.
He listens to all of that, but you get the sense that some of the big words are kind of going over his head. But
Uh-huh.
so he like hesitates, but you hear a small voice around you go, "Gifts, give us gifts!" High piping voice, and then a bunch of them take up the gifts, 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 and he goes, "Yes, gifts, yes, you must give us gifts, yes, gifts," and then he chants with them,
And what gifts would you desire?
and he stops and he looks slightly confused, and like everybody's quiet, and then it seems like somebody else has been shoved out of the bushes. And
Mm-hmm.
this one seems female. She's got longer hair. It's it's green, but it's longer, and she's about the same size as him. And she stumbles and then looks fierce,
Yeah.
and she stomps up, and she gets up pretty close to you, and she puts her finger in your face, and she
Uh-huh.
says, "Shinies!" And then everybody, yes, shiny, 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 shiny. They all start yelling it, and she looks very satisfied, and the guy in the hat's like, "I was gonna say that," you know.
About how many shinies, how much gold or silver or whatever do I have on me? I didn't
So
ascertain that when I
you
made the turn.
know that shinies don't necessarily mean gold. It literally
Right.
means anything that's just shiny.
Right. Right. Right.
And um, I think your order probably. Well, would it be safe to say that the Church of Tyr, like, material goods are not kind of.
Yeah.
And I
You
don't.
just have enough probably to live on that you're allowed to keep
Right.
and carry.
And I think probably the only person in the group that has a big purse, if you will, for
Yeah.
buying supply is probably the mayor. The order probably gave it to the mayor.
Right.
So I don't think you have a lot of that, but I would say, like most people, I'm going like a lot of young boys have random stuff in their pockets. I'll say you probably
Right.
have a button that fell off of one of your shirts
Right.
that's made out of metal, and you also have oh, let's say you also have a couple of beads that one of the little kids like ran up to you and they were like, "Here you go," and that's in your pocket. And you
Okay.
also have the feather from like one of those birds where when you twist the feather, it's got the like oil slick look to it. So and
Oh yeah.
fluff and pins and stuff like that. That's all in your pocket.
Okay. Uh, I like that. All right. Well then, he takes out his purse, his belt pouch, and dumps out the coins into his hand, and holds his hand so she can see.
And she says, "No, shinies."
All right. He puts that back in there, and then he goes to his pocket, and first he pulls out the metal button.
And she goes, "Hmm." And the male crowd's in there, and he picks it up and he puts it on his chest, like in a slightly
Uh-huh.
empty spot. And she goes,
Uh-huh.
"Ooh, shiny." And he says, "Yes, shiny, more."
And the feather,
She
I smooth
snatches
it out for them.
she snatches that, and she like pets it, and for her it's like you know to a human,
Yeah.
it's quite bit. It's maybe like the length of one of her arms.
Right.
And she pets it, and she says it's just shiny, and then they start coming out of the bushes, and there's
Right.
about 15 of them, and they're all shinies. I want a shiny. We all shiny. God, shinies.
All right. How many total shinies do I think I have in my pocket?
You've only got about 3, but I do want to remind you that that little old lady told you she knew
Right.
what
Right.
they
Yeah, I
would need.
remember.
So you might be able to recruit her help.
All right. I look at all of them. I said, "Would you be happy if I could acquire shinies for each and every one of you?"
The first two that you spoke to sort of look at each other, and they look at their button and their feather, and they look around and at everybody, and they say, "Yes, shiny for everyone."
And I have one more shiny, very shiny, that I will give your entire group if you will return the fish spice that was taken from one of the wagons.
The the two that you were talking to look confused, and then the male like looks like he realizes something, and he spins around and he throws himself at another one of the Fae and starts like flapping him, and the other Fae is like, no, get off, get off. And the female rolls her eyes about as much as a tiny humanoid can, and says, "He took the spice. Well, I'll find it. For a shiny."
Alright.
She says, "For a shiny."
And here, I will let you see the shiny ahead of time. You can't have it yet, but when the spice is returned. And he reaches into his pack and finds his steel mirror and sets it down just in front of the little female fairy so she can see herself.
All of them crowd around it. She steps on it and is like looking at herself, and they all crowd around it, and just they're so excited they can barely talk. It's just like all of these little squeaky noises. And the two that were rolling around on the ground run up, and they're in love with this mirror.
All right, now this will belong to all of you, so you will have to share it.
They kind of stop and they look at each other, and the first male that you spoke to says, "Big tree," and they all go, "Big tree, big tree, big tree, big tree." And you can tell that they're, they've agreed. Like, yes, it almost seems like the big tree is like something they all share as well. So the concept of sharing, that's where they're sort of.
All right, yeah. I take the mirror and I put it back in my pocket, and I said, "When I have the spice, you may have the shiny."
The Fae that was being slapped by the male immediately runs off. Like he's like, yes, and he runs off, and everybody like glares after him, and yes, he'll be back.
All right. How many? I count them. How many of them are there?
So when you did your first, your divine sense, you could tell there were about 30 of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a lot of shinies.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I will wait here for him to return, and I will let them look in the mirror while we wait.
Okay. So he comes running back, and he's got a pouch slung over his shoulder, which for you would kind of fit in the palm of your hand, but for him it's like down to his butt, and he's kind of trying to run back, and he looks ridiculous. And when that first male sees him, he runs over to him and starts, jumping on him and slapping him again. And the first female you saw rolls her eyes, picks up the pouch, and brings it to you. And she says, "It smells real bad, but it was real funny when they yelled."
Yeah, I imagine so. And I will take the mirror back out of my pocket and set it down, lean it against something like a weed or something, so that they can.
Yeah, they all crowd around. And she points at like however many it would take to pick it up, probably 5 or 6, and she like as a command says, "Big tree." They all pick it up and they start to take it away. And she turns back around and she says, "What about the rest of us?" And she like waves her feather.
That is what I have to do. If you will give me the fish spice, I will go get you shinies from all of the humans.
And she looks like she's trying to pretend to think about it, and then she says, "Good." So she gives you the spice.
Okay.
And she says, "We will be here." And then they all fade back into the bushes, and it's just the male and the female again, and they sit on the ground.
"I will return soon with your shinies. Speak to no other humans."
And they nod, like, yeah, duh, of course.
All right. And then I will get up and take my hammers.
Mm-hmm.
Don't want those going to the big tree.
Mm-mm.
And go back to the families in the encampment.
So the mayor intercepts you, and he's like, "Well, is your plan working?"
Yes, it is. Here's the fish spice.
His mouth drops open as you hand this to him, and he was like, Did you kill all of them?"
"I have not killed a soul today. I have simply talked to them and arranged for passage through their land."
He looks like his world has fallen apart. Like, this is so, and he just kind of like, he's like rubbing his head, and he's got the spice, and I have to give this back to the Toto family, and like starts to walk over that way, but he's kind of talking to himself and just like, he doesn't know what to do about this.
I smile after him as he walks away, and I head back to the wagon so I can get back up on the tailgate and speak to everyone.
Yeah, they're all still there. You know, some of them have sat down and started card games and stuff, but they're all still there.
I have come to a solution for our problem.
And somebody yells, "Is it the Fae?"
It is the Fae.
And you hear
There was
fear.
no one in this wagon train that stole the fish spice.
You actually hear fear. Like there are some that are, like the mayor, terrified, and somebody else yells, "Are you going to kill them all? You were sworn to protect us."
Calm yourself. We have inadvertently, that's a big word for him. He's always wanted to use it, and he's never had a chance to.
He's very proud
Wandered
of
through
himself.
their land. We are trespassers in their home.
You can,
That is why they were annoying us.
the granny.
I have made it.
You see the granny on the edge, and she's like nodding along with you, and like her family is all like, "Yeah, this makes sense." And other families are like looking at them and being like, "Okay," like they don't have experience with this.
I have made an agreement with them. For us to pass through their lands, they require payment.
This seems to be a concept they're all familiar with. Like, okay, you know, and somebody's like, "We don't have any money."
They want what they refer to as shinies.
There's confusion.
I
The
gave them-
grandmother nods, like, "Yep." There's everybody's
I
like, "What
gave
the-"
them 3 already. A button for my dress uniform. A feather that was particularly pretty, which is why I kept it. And something else I can't remember what I gave
a
them.
mirror. You gave him a mirror.
Oh, and my steel mirror.
Everybody's like, "Okay, yeah, and the granny is nodding, like, "Yeah, those are all good." And when you say the mirror, she's like, "Oh yeah, that's a good gift." So, yeah, they're like, "Okay, yeah, all right, okay."
So if each person here, excepting the small children, of course, the adults, could come up with something of that nature. It doesn't have to be a mirror. I understand those are expensive. But a shiny button or bauble or feather or something pretty.
You're seeing like head scratches, and like the couple families around the grandmother are like, you know, they're all like, they all start to go get one, and the granny walks forward, and she knocks on the side of the wagon, and she says, "You've got better lungs than I do. You repeat after me, young man."
Yes, ma'am.
And she says, "You tell them spoons, little carvings, like the things you carve by the wood side, you know, by the fireside." And she says, ribbon that can be cut up into little pieces. She starts to list all kinds of like random things that are less shiny and more pretty, right? Little knick-knacky
Right.
type things. And they're
Okay.
they're all things that you could spare, like you know, a ribbon or
Right. Little bit of something.
yeah.
All right. He gets back up and he starts saying, adding to the list of things that he had said,
And
and everything of that he can remember what she said.
she keeps prompting you from the ground,
Okay.
and so as you're listing these things off, you'll see people be like, "Oh, I have, yeah," and they run off to get that, and people are trickling back in with these items. And they're putting them on the side of the wagon, and you're getting buttons, you're getting shiny rocks, you're getting all kinds of stuff. The kids are running up with stuff, and sometimes they'll take something like,
Yeah.
they're not super helping, but at least they're swapping things. Like one kid
Right.
knocks another one down and is like, "Swap," and so they're swapping things out. So you almost have little Faye with you anyway,
Right.
and
I let all the stuff pile up there on the tailgate of the wagon.
the granny's standing by, and she's sort of inspecting everything that comes in, and like one guy comes up with like a rock that isn't shiny, and she says no, and he like goes away again, like, "I don't know what to do," so she's kind of your quality control.
Right. Oh, good. I thank you, grandmother. I would not be able to do this without your help.
She nods like, yeah, I know that. The mayor actually comes up and he has a piece of round metal that's had whatever was embedded on it rubbed away. So it might have been a coin, but at this point it's just sort of a shiny disc. And he says,
Uh-huh.
"Will this work?" And Granny looks at it and she says, "What is this?" And he says, "It's my luck piece." And she folds his hand back over it and says, "No, you keep this." And then she jerks a button off his vest and she says, "This'll work," and puts it down. And he sort of like sighs and is like, "All right." He wanders away again.
All right. Now, and I make sure while they're gathering this, I said, make sure each adult brings something to give to them. You do
And
not want to be the one person who does not pay for passage through their woods.
you see a couple people
And I
like
look stern at him.
a couple of people are like, "Oh, okay," and so a couple more people trickle forward, and then you see one like skinniest old man you've ever seen. He's so hunched over and he's got the ear of a young man in his like, and the old man's like, "Okay, I'll do it, you know. And he puts down a whole ribbon, and like grumbles about like, "It's supposed to be a gift from a girl," you know, and wanders off.
All right. And then, all right, I believe this will be sufficient.
The Granny says, "Yes,
You,
yeah, it's one from everybody." She tells you.
and Leon will stand there and make the sign of Tyr above the crowd. You all be blessed by Tyr this day for the honor you do these people.
They all sort of look prouder of themselves, you know, like, yes, we do good. We're good folk.
But remember, the judgments of Tyr can be harsh for those who unjustly steal from another.
The Toto
And he looks
family,
very stern.
the Toto family will glare at the Sign family, and the Sign family will glare at the Toto family.
And I look at the Toto family. You got your spice back?
And the matriarch raises it up in the air and then sort of like hides it against her chest, and she's like, "Yes."
Remember, that family, the Sign, did not take your spice. To falsely accuse somebody of something in the future would be as bad as doing the crime yourself.
Somebody in the Sign family literally like puts their hands up and wiggles their fingers and sticks their tongue out, and somebody else whaps them in the back of the head so hard they stagger, you know, and
Yeah.
the Toto family kind of looks defiantly thoughtful, like like they, you know, they heard
Yeah.
you, but like,
Well, Leon's pretty sure he's just given them a lot to think about if anybody decides they might want to steal something in the future.
right.
You know, about how much they like their hand.
Well, that and like you found out who did it, even though it wasn't
Yeah.
one of them. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. He will retrieve a pouch. Does he have an? I probably have an empty pouch in my backpack, right?
Sure. Yeah.
All right, and I'll gather up all of the shinies and fill the pack with them.
Mhm.
And then I'll go back to the where the Fae were in the little clearing.
The two are sitting there kind of bickering and like shoving each other. When they
Just as an estimate, how many shinies do I think I got from the wagon?
I think you've got about 20 or 30 families with you. So you've got like 60 or 65 of these, you know, if there's at least 2 adults in every family,
Right.
you know.
So I figure about enough to give every one of the Fae 2 things rather than one that I promised them.
Definitely. Yeah. And at this point none of them are ringing the wagons anymore. They're all in the bushes around you.
All right. And I once again kneel down, setting my weapons aside.
They stand up and look important.
I have spoken with the humans that have trespassed in your forest,
Yes, trespass.
and they are very, very sorry for what they have done. And out of respect for your people and a need for justice, they have decided that the payment to you and your people shall be doubled.
Yes, 2 shinies, and they get really
And I
excited.
take the bag and start dumping it out on the ground right there in front of them.
That a horde of fae descend upon you and the shinies, and if you watch, you can see the first male and female sort of like shoving people that are trying to take more than 2, and they get in there
Right.
first, and she snatches up like a really shiny bead, and he snatches up like a shiny rock or something, but they shove everybody until there are only to only take 2, and like there were feathers and spoons and stuff, and eventually there's like, we'll say there's like 5 things left on the blanket, and you can see the they've backed off, but they're all still standing there, and they've got this like lean forward, I want to snatch it shiny. There's only 5.
All right. These remaining 5 will go to your great tree.
And they were all of the 5 objects were a little bit bigger. So like one was a big serving spoon, with a fancy,
Right.
And they all, ooh yeah, big tree, and they get really excited.
And they will belong to all of you
Yes,
at
yes.
your big tree.
And the male says, our tree is shining, and they all yell, tree is shining. They get really excited.
Now, you will not hinder us as we pass through your lands any further, will you?
You can see the male and female kind of look at each other, and they look at their shinies, and they look at each other, and she makes a like a bird cry over her shoulder, and you see the fae like dart off, and then they start to come back, and they start to bring like shoelaces and buckles and like coins, and it's all stuff they knew would cause inconvenience and not
Right.
shiny stuff, which you find really interesting is like they deliberately target things that are a hindrance, but they don't take people's shinies. This group
Right,
doesn't
right.
take those, and so you get a
All right.
small pile in the same spot that the shinies were. And she's watching, and then it stops trickling in, and she's kind of looking at the pile, and she says, she kind of hard nod, and kind of shoves the male, and he's, oh yes, no, yes, the payment is good, shinies, no more, yes. And he's not really putting words together, but you get the
Right.
picture.
He's agreeing.
Yeah.
All right. I will gather up all the stuff they gave back and put it in the same pouch that I had their shinies in. And it says, now, we have conducted good and honest business between the 2 groups, such as the Justice of Tyr. I regret having to say this, but do not trust the next group of humans that come through the forest.
They look like, well, duh.
All right.
I think they even say like, well, duh. Like they, they're like, we're not stupid,
And I'll pick up one of my hammers, and I'll show them the rune that's carved into the side of the head of the hammer.
They flinch, but like, okay, yeah, we didn't flinch. You didn't see that.
If you see somebody carrying this sign, you may trust in them.
They nod, like, okay.
And I lay the hammer back down carefully, not being threatening.
They flinch, and then you didn't see that again.
All right, one more thing I would like to ask before we leave, just because we're friends.
Yes, friends. Yes, shinies, friends. And they pat their shinies.
Are there any hazards in these woods that me and my fellow humans need to concern ourselves with as we travel towards the coast?
The bushes shiver, and the male and the female get closer together. And they say, the male goes, you go to town?
The one on the coast?
Yeah, big water. Town?
Yes, that's where we're going.
And
I hope.
he whispers with the female, and he says, "There's big bad in the town."
Ah, can you describe what the big bad looks like?
They shake their heads fiercely and like, "No, no, us, big bad, you." And he like points at the hammer, and he says,
Uh-huh.
and he like pats the rune, and he says,
Uh-huh.
you can fix it."
All right. I will fix it. And understand, when I fix it, I do not do it just for the humans, but I do it for your folk too.
They he's like, it takes him a minute to understand what you mean, and then he gets really excited, and he says he like starts sort of talking too fast for you to catch, but you catch like big tree and like home again, and you get the idea that they were driven out of a lot of their territory and they felt like they were just able to defend the big tree, but their territory shrunk because of whatever's in that town. So their territory is probably closer to the town than
Right.
is usually closer to the town. They've been driven out, kind of.
I will remove this evil thing so you can resume your full range of your lands. But your people and my people will forever be friends.
Yes, friends, shinies, friends.
All right.
Now
Then it is agreed.
these little critters do not have a long memory, so
Right.
I think Leon would know, based on what the granny said, like there's the right way to do a home, that this town is gonna have to all adopt these
Right.
practices.
That's what I intend to do when I get back.
Yeah.
Do any of the little fae look injured in any way?
No. They also don't stand still very, very much. Like they're all moving around.
Right. Well, yeah, the fae that stands still a lot gets eaten by a hawk.
Right. Yeah.
All right, then. You go back and enjoy your forest, and I will go back and continue escorting my people to the town.
And you get nods from both the male and the female, and then they start yelling "big tree," and they disappear into the bushes, and you hear the whole group yelling "big tree" for a little while.
All right, and I gather up everybody's stolen stuff
So
and go back once again.
I think when you get back to the encampment, the mayor's gonna approach you, and he's gonna have a conversation with you where he, you really stepped up today, and I learned something, and maybe I should think about some of the. He doesn't really put it this way, but he's like, maybe I should think about some of the prejudice I have against certain creatures, and you're right, there might be ways to think about this, and he really seems humble in that moment where like he doesn't know everything.
It is understandable that we have our biases, but remember, Tyr brings justice to all creatures,
And he nods like,
and not just the ones that believe in him.
normally when you talk about Tyr like that, he's sort of like tolerant, but now he seems
Right.
to really be listening. Like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And the granny's gonna like pat your probably elbows, which she can reach, and good job, and
Uh-huh.
go back off to her family.
And as she's walking away, I say, grandmother,
She turns around.
teach all of the other families how to deal with the Fae. I'm putting you in charge of this.
She
If anyone
sighs.
gives you trouble, come and tell me.
She kind of perks up at that. She's like, all right, yeah, okay. And she keeps going back to her family. So we're pretty close to the end of our time, Temple. So I think let's wrap this. I'll wrap this up. I think
Okay.
I think the families. This is the first time you've really come across something like this. The whole group.
Right.
It's the first time you've come across something like this as well. You handled yourself really well, which I think would probably give him a bit of a big head. Just for the record.
Right. Oh, yeah. Definitely.
But the families seem like tighter knit at this point because they feel like they dodged a bullet in a way. And you pick up on that. they'll get to the town in the next probably week. Again, slow going, maybe 2 weeks. And when you get there, and if you do your divine sense thing again, there is something in the temple. You recognize that you have some time to deal with it. It's safe for them to
Right.
move into the town. It's probably better not to tell them. You need to do some
Right.
research, like, and while you're doing all that, like, he's gonna encounter, like, you know, big lion cats or something that,
Right.
or
Right.
brownies that, rooted in the rafters or whatever. So you're gonna have lots to
Right.
do, and this
Right.
presence in the temple lurks. Like, you can't go there until
Right.
he gets a little more experience, and maybe even the priest that's gonna show up to reconsecrate. Maybe they work together. Like, so he's gonna spend some time in this town, and there's gonna
Right.
be all these disturbances. He'll encounter the Fae again, you know. The whole town will,
Yeah.
and I think that's where we'll leave it for now. Is there anything else you want to
Okay.
mention?
I made sure all the people got the sack with all the stuff that was stolen, and they can
Yep.
sort through it and find their stuff.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's some bickering, but yeah, they do pretty good with that.
and he's just out to spread the good word of Tyr, bring justice to the countryside.
Yep.
But yeah, he is full of himself. That how well he handled this, and
I think when he handles the thing in the temple, he'll end up getting injured. Um,
yeah,
I didn't do anything with the magic item today, but I think if Tyr continues, his that dagger is gonna end up being imbued with something at some point. Yeah.
cool.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that's a good place to leave it. I really like this character. What'd you think? How'd that go for you?
Oh, that's great. I loved it. It was fun.
It could be
This
fun.
is I tell you, I didn't tell you ahead of time, but this character is one of a group of characters that I've made that I intend to write a novelization of my world, and it's
Awesome.
going to be in a group that travels through the thing. And this is a great first adventure for him to go out on and do stuff. So
That's awesome. I can't wait to read that. That's
yeah,
going to be really good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's it's not something I'm going to be looking to publish. I just find if I write a story,
Mm-hmm.
set in a world, it makes the world have even more depth. And,
Oh, absolutely. I do that too. Yeah.
and yeah.
Well, that's cool. If you ever do decide to share it with people, I would love to read that.
If I share it with anyone, it'll be with you.
Yes.
I write a lot of stuff, and I don't share it with anybody usually.
I don't.
So,
I
it's
don't
just for me.
either.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I started running TTRPGs is so my husband could get to experience some of the stories I created. Because
Yeah.
he was always really interested in reading my stuff, but it's not ready, and yeah, so
Yeah.
I get that for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so to wrap us up today, I asked my guests if they would like to share anything that they're going to be doing, like another stream or something they're putting out, like a book or whatever. If you'd like to share that now with the stream, anything that they can come find you at later.
On March 27th at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Central Time, I will be hosting a panel at the virtual GaryCon
Oh,
on
nice.
accessibility in gaming.
Yes, that's
And
awesome.
It'll be me, it'll be Devin Rue, it'll be Jennifer Krutchner, and I can't think of the others right at this moment.
That's a
but,
good group right there. Yeah.
I'll be putting out a lot of advertisements for it as we go.
So we can find that on Twitter at Blind Temple.
Yes, it'll be and it'll be on the GaryCon page and everything too. It's
sure.
one of the events for it.
Very cool. Okay.
So yeah,
That'll be fun.
yeah,
Great.
Uh,
Anything else you'd like
that's
to?
about it.
Okay. Any other games that you're
I
streaming
think.
or
Oh
anything?
wait, actually, at the end of this month, there's a group of people that are going to do a live stream charity event for me because I'm
Yes.
looking for a kidney donor
Yeah.
and to help me raise money and maybe find a living donor. So it'll be the end of this month, and it's going to be a live stream of the Wizard of Oz.
Oh, neat. Like a
Yeah,
game,
they
or are they
story.
gonna just
Yep, it's going to be a game. It'll be a D&D game with
very
each
cool?
of us. Yeah, I'll be in it, and some other people, and it'll be more than one episode, so it'll be a short campaign-like story.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I'll keep an eye on
Yeah.
your Twitter for that because I assume you'll send out a link for it. But
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm glad that you mentioned that. I really think that I want you to get a kidney so bad. I want you to be
Yeah, me
around
too.
for a long time. So I really hope that that helps, and it's good to spread awareness about that as well. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
Well, thank you,
You,
and thank you for welcoming me to your show. I really enjoyed it. This is a great format, and you're an amazing DM.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really did enjoy this. This was a good story, and thank you for taking the time. I know that can be very precious, and so I appreciate you sharing that with me. So stream. I think Treasure Tuesday is back on Tuesday. I think, and I think Broken Bane is back on next Saturday. So stay posted, and check out my Twitter, like Seven Spoon, and I'll post there about it. But Stream, thank you so much for joining us today. If anybody is interested in Dungeons and Dragons, I have some open dates, and I'd love to play with y'all. And I think that's it. So I think we're ready to say bye, Stream. Okay, bye, Stream. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend.